Good morning, folks. We're just getting ready to start the presentation today, but waiting for a few more people to join, so I'll just leave it another minute or so. So prepare to be entertained. Back to you very shortly. All right, guys, we're just shy of 5 minutes past 11, so I think we might see a few more stragglers join us shortly. But firstly, thanks to everybody that's managed to take some time out of their day today. I do appreciate everyone's busy, and just like to thank you for your support. Firstly, just to some introductions. So my name is Graham Lowbridge. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director at Accucom. We're a mid-market IT integrator. Worked a lot in the aged care, education and some other verticals and been around for a long, long time. So Rob Coleman up the top of the screen, well, I think he's up the top of your screen. He's a SASE consultant with HPE Aruba. He's worked for the last 10 years or so with Aruba and their SD-WAN acquisition, Silverpeak. A lot of experience in the industry, and we're looking forward to hearing from him today. So Deepak, he is the General Manager of ICT Services at Lutheran Services. He's a consulting CTO for a number of aged care organisations and responsible for the strategic direction and development and delivery of, in particular, some SaaS applications. So he's also been around a number of years, no reference to his age, and looking forward to hearing from him today as well. So today's session definitely won't be death by PowerPoint. We'll have a couple of setting the scene slides. But we're going to move very quickly into more of a fireside chat where Rob and Deepak will have a conversation around Deepak's journey and where the SASE journey has come from Aruba over the last few years as well. And enough from me. Before I did say that we'd hand over, there will be an opportunity to ask questions throughout the conversation, next 45 minutes. So do throw them into the chat along the way, and where relevant, I'll pull them out and we'll get them answered as we go through it. But Rob and Deepak, thanks for your time today. Over to you.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Raymond. Thanks everyone for attending this webinar. By way of introduction, Rob Com, SASE Technical Lead for HPE Aruba for ANZ. And before we get into the conversation proper, I'd like to just go kind of set the scene as to kind of, I guess, what SASE is and why we need it. So fundamentally, the way people have worked has evolved quite a bit over the past decade. And there's two fundamental shifts in the market that are driving SASE adoption. And I guess kind of what is SASE to begin with? It's really just a new way of architecting your networking and security architecture. There's two key drivers here. First are the applications themselves, right? So every single organization that we discuss with these days has a cloud-first strategy. And what that really means is organizations no longer house their own applications. They no longer manage them on their own tin in their own data centers. They've kind of outsourced that to some of the larger, public or private cloud providers. And a similar paradigm shift on the other end of that connection around users as well has proliferated over the past 5 years. And really what that means is it's the same shift from applications from your tin to cloud infrastructure, whereby the users are no longer predominantly in offices or sitting behind your infrastructure. They could potentially be anywhere across the globe trying to connect back to your corporate application. So this is kind of the why of SASE. And really what it's doing here is it's facilitating that connectivity between the user and the workload, no matter where that user is connecting from and no matter where that workload resides. So that's the why of SASE. Now, what is SASE? Now, SASE was coined by Gartner in 2019. And it's really a definition of what functionality should exist within a SASE architecture. So SASE is not particularly a technology. It's a two-technology play. It's more around the overall architecture of networking and security, and really moving away from a more traditional approach to that. And the more traditional approach is whereby networking security is focused on your site or your data center. SASE shifts that focus away from your infrastructure to cloud infrastructure, right? So the emphasis on SASE is really about users and workloads in cloud infrastructure. So there's two sides to the SASE coin. First is the WAN edge, or SD-WAN. So there's a huge slew of capabilities that we can build into the edge. And the main purpose of this is to kind of collapse and consolidate your edge footprint at your particular sites. Now, this can be your offices, head offices, data centers, cloud infrastructure, or it can even be a work from home employee. There's a huge amount of capability built in there, but it's really around kind of identifying and identification and context, and then doing something with that particular user and or application from a WAN perspective. Now, the other side of the SASE coin is cloud security, or SSE. Now, this is, again, very much focused on cloud infrastructure. It's about giving you the ability to lift and shift all those security capabilities you once had in your infrastructure to cloud infrastructure. The benefits of there is clearly you don't have to manage that infrastructure, similar to your applications and users, but it also allows security to follow the user no matter where that user is connecting from. So you take the example, if you've got a user on-site, off-site, in a cafe, in an airport lounge, it doesn't matter where they are, they connect to the closest cloud infrastructure to get their security policy to adhere to. So with that, we'll jump into the conversation proper here. So let me just stop sharing this. Okay. So we have Deepak Oberoi from Lutheran Services, General Manager ICT. Deepak has just gone through this SASE journey from a more traditional network and security architecture to a modernized one, where it's very much focused on the cloud. So what I want to do here is really just ask Deepak, kind of, I guess, maybe introduce yourself a little bit more, tell me about Lutheran Services, what you do there, and maybe just go through kind of the catalyst for this change in the network. So what were your challenges you had with networking and security, and what were you really looking for to kind of fix that in the market?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So as you know, I'm Deepak. I'm the general manager currently for Lutheran Services, and I've been with them for about 3 years as the consulting virtual CTO, CIO, along with some other HK clients as well. Now, it's very common, I suppose, for our industry in a way to be lagging in a lot of this stuff. And when I first came in, it was the similar sort of story, like, lack of investment in networking, security, and all that. And the traditional setup we had, again, like the time to commissioning a new site and the cost we were paying, as well as the dependency on our, the provider that was providing the SD-WAN sector for us in terms of networking and security, they were just too much in terms of us being agile. We acquired a site at Lutheran, like we are currently about 11 HK sites plus some community and home care as well. And the time it took to sort of integrate someone, into our network and, how we would do it traditionally, I just knew at that time, a couple of years ago, that this was just not going to cut it, especially the aspirations we have around growth and providing the customer service and resident and our clients that we want to do, and in terms of additional services and anything extra we want to provide it, it just wasn't possible. So there were all these business needs that were coming to IT around, commissioning new things or providing the service, with better speed, cheaper cost, etc. We were just not able to do it, and we were not in a position to change that at the time. So those were some of our challenges we were facing at the time.
Yeah, right. And they're very typical challenges we see across the board. So kind of the visibility, manageability, ability to change on a dime is something the more traditional network security architecture does not have. Yeah. You typically have to go to maybe a service provider, someone similar, to make changes. It's cost prohibitive.
Yep.
things like that. So Deepak, I suppose on the back of that, kind of what was your key criteria to select, I guess, the appropriate solution for Lutheran Services?
From the outset, I think cybersecurity, obviously, given I think it was my probably first year here when all the Blue K stuff happened around, their cyber incident. So it was just too close to home, right? So, they're a large organization going through sort of similar challenges. So it was too close to home. So we just went, okay, something needs to change here. Obviously, the traditional solutions and the traditional vendors, their thing is just to sell you more of the widgets and more of the boxes. But we knew that wasn't the way, and that would just lock us into another, long-term contract with inflexibilities, etc. So that's where we start looking at, Zero Trust and SASE as an approach. And we started simplifying our network, from I suppose having multiple vendors, multiple things plugged in, multiple layers in terms of when you're managing a firewall versus when you're managing a routing sort of situation versus how you provisioning stuff. Like they were all just done in different portals, different vendors. It just had so much labor intensive and cost prohibitive in terms of getting those things done. So cost, cybersecurity, and also I suppose the ease of operations would be our top 3 drivers.
Yeah, got it. And we've seen that across the board too, right? So we're not, from a SASE architectural perspective, we're not just collapsing and consolidating the functionality at the edge or in the cloud. We're also collapsing and consolidating the vendor footprint within these organizations to make it much easier to give that consistent user experience and consistent security across the board. So let's kind of move into, I guess, the rollout, Deepak. So you made all the decisions around criteria, you made the decisions regarding the vendor and the solutions. What were kind of the key steps you took there in order to kind of move from the old to the new?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things to recognize is the project itself might have been just 6-month project, but it was like a 2-year, preparation and simplification, etc. And also changing of mindset. Like I remember one of my biggest challenge would have been selling it internally. Something that's new, obviously has risks associated, and there's not many, companies that were doing it well. Let's say a couple of years ago, it was I suppose it's a risk versus reward thing, right? So when you've got things like Blue K happening, at the same time you're trying to have a conversation with move away from the traditional setup to something that's more risky and may require us to learn and sort of come up to speed in those new technologies and new ways of working. So selling it internally probably was more of a battle than anything else, because technically I suppose I was confident that we could, looking at the business requirements, matching them to the technical solution, etc., working at our use cases, and working with the technical team to go, okay, this is how we could solve these things. We did do a couple of pilots, as well at the start, again, just to reduce the risk and understand all our use cases can be met, etc. And once like you have done enough, then it all becomes clear in terms of how best to approach it, etc. But it was more like having the vision, knowing where we wanted to be, start to simplify, and then sell it internally to our stakeholders and get them on board, and then go from there.
Yeah, right. You made a good point there, selling it internally. So we as a vendor, we kind of sell all the time, right? So
Yeah.
I focus on the technical side, the salesperson focuses on the business side, so to kind of sell into the organization. But the key part we don't really see often is the internal selling, right? So we kind of convince the technical teams, we convince the management teams, but then they have to go back to the business and kind of give them some sort of justification as to why we should move forward here. So I guess what were the keys there internally to kind of enable that mind to shift and go, yes, we absolutely need to move in this direction?
I think the biggest thing was I was very upfront and honest to say we would this was risky, right? Because, technology is new. We would have to work in a new way. And obviously, no matter how bad it was, but it was known, right? So it's the typical thing of, okay, we have a vendor who's been supporting us. We haven't had an incident. Like everything seems to be working. Why change type of thing? But you like being honest in terms of, these things, like if we don't move, voluntarily, so to speak, then we will be made to move, right? So being honest and getting into the room with all the executives and having that conversation as we did develop the business case. So I remember going in with the sort of open mind as well, that it could not get up and it could get rejected as well, because obviously but having that open mind also allowed then others to kind of contribute in terms of their, like, whether it's, your CFO, the questions they ask would be different to the people who work in marketing, etc., who are more concerned about, residents and our client side of things, right?
Yeah.
So they all had different perspective, and once you can address, and HR obviously, would have different perspective as well. Once you can address those main groups, the others kind of come on board. And once, I think one of the good thing was, like I said, the Blue K thing was an example that was just like very ripe at that stage. So I kind of used that as one of the drivers as well.
Rob,
Yeah,
first
right. Interesting.
question, if you don't mind, just from the floor. So for Deepak, did the Royal Commission mandates with regards to aged care have any impact on where the vision, the business moved forward?
I wouldn't say directly to networking stuff, because they're more focused on the interconnectivity of the systems rather than, I suppose, more towards networking, etc. Where it does have impact is some of the latest stuff that's come out with My Health Record, etc., where you have to have certain levels of controls and policies in place for accessing the I suppose the My Health Record data through other systems, etc. So having zero trust, actually, having the SASE approach actually made it easier for us to then implement. But it was already done, and now we could take advantage of it and look at that. But at that point, we didn't really use Royal Commission as the driver. It was more, like I said, the drivers were more around cybersecurity, cost, and simplification, and reducing the number of vendors we had in the chain.
People don't expect the side benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so Deepak, I worked quite closely with you on this deployment. Understand that, top of mind was zero trust, right? Zero trust. So it's all about kind of identity and context, no matter where the user's coming from. And based on that identity and context, we're then able to do something with that particular session from both a networking and security perspective. So I guess back to the rollout here, Deepak, how did you kind of deploy this new architecture out to Lutheran in a way that it didn't have that much of an impact to the business? Was that a challenge, or was that relatively easy in hindsight?
I'd say, good preparation was the key here. Like I said, because even though the project was 6 months, but it was like a 2-year coming type of thing. So working on good plan and doing the pilot and kind of ironing out the issues, that was kind of key here. But once we got into the rollout, I remember like cutting over about 25 sites, right? Over about 12 weeks to 15 weeks as well. So we were doing sometimes 1 to 2 sites a week, and some weeks we didn't do any. So I think it was about 12 weeks and about obviously 25 sites. So that was kind of the cutover stuff. The first one probably took us about 4 hours in terms of the cutover. By the time we got to our last few sites, it was in the matter of minutes. So we were cutting over sites in 1 minute, 2 minute downtime. It just exponentially, sort of, as we learned and as we did things, we were able to pre-configure, preset, and this is going, switch over, away we go type of thing. So the actual rollout from site perspective, obviously, a good project is when no one knows there was a project, right? So all our cutovers, like we communicated there's going to be outage, and we were able to get those outages managed in a way where it didn't have a significant impact on the business. But it was because we did the preparation, because we were ready, the way, and the way yourself and Mark supported us in that.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, that's a crucial component. I mean, planning is everything, right? So absolutely makes sense. Okay, so on the back of that, I suppose, from understanding you have quite a lean IT team, understanding you have a little bit of external support as well. How does it go from a kind of a day-to-day management perspective in that respect?
So that's in terms of you like one of the things. Again, I say this all the time. True innovation really comes from lack of resources, isn't it? Like once you have abundance, there's no need to change, right? So for us, that could be seen like obviously being a lean IT, like we got more than, like I said, 25 sites with about 2,000 staff. I've got 4 guys that look after everything, like the apps, networking, in IT, and obviously it's very crucial for us to have visibility. I think that's probably the biggest thing it's done. Like, so since the implementation, we now have visibility. Like, so we can look at our network and go, here's our AP. This AP is failing or not connecting versus this user, and like their login failed or whatever to the Atmos clients, etc. We've installed on all our devices for the Zero Trust and SASE, etc. Like it's all, it's like 1 to 2 portals to go to rather than having to go to 50 different things, 3 different vendors, etc.
Yeah.
So visibility has now given us efficiency, and then there's no logging it with the vendor, then work out what the change is, and like they come back and they schedule it, and we kind of make the change. It 2 to 3 weeks, has gone down to us just following our normal CAP process and implementing the change in a managed way. And we could, if it's an emergency, we could do it straight away, like matter of minutes rather than days and weeks.
Yeah, one of the most overlooked benefits of SASE architecture is by far the control and visibility, and just the ability to, I mean, if there is an incident on the network, the time that incident's been notified to the time you actually know what's happening and fix it can be minutes as compared to potentially hours in an older architecture. So I guess from that day-to-day management perspective, you've implemented, you're managing it now. What's the feedback from the business, both from, I guess, technical and more senior leadership?
Yeah, so I think it's I always use the term unclogged our network. Essentially everything, because like when you have the traditional setup, obviously you come into the data center and kind of it's just one tunnel out and in from that traditional perspective. But now we've seen improvement in our Teams calling. We've seen improvements in our like day-to-day obviously usage. We can fully utilize the bandwidth of our network. Whatever link we put it on a site that can be fully utilized. Before, it was all dependent on the backbone kind of, whatever was connected with the data center, rather than, us having it. We had gig links at site, but they could never utilize that gig link, fully, etc. So there obviously, vast kind of improvement, and I've got screenshots as the guys were doing implementations, our network was going from getting like 10 20 meg type of speeds to now actually going 50 or 100 meg depending on the link, etc. So it all kind of unclogged our network, made the user experience much better. Obviously from our resident side of things and our customer side of things, we got a project currently going on where we're implementing additional services, and as part of that we are offering high-speed Wi-Fi and all that. So again, all that wouldn't have been possible had we not unclogged our network in a way, but obviously have the security and have the peace of mind that whatever we're doing is monitored and it's managed.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like the unclog bit too, because it's a good pun actually, and it's quite relevant because SASE really does do that, right? It doesn't lock you down to a single path to get in and out of your network. You have literally kind of potentially 100 ways to get in and out.
Yeah.
So I guess from a vendor's perspective, like the way to prepare this is to clearly understand what you need as a business as an outcome in terms of kind of what capability do I need, which vendors do I look at, things like that. So I guess I'll just land on one last question for you, Deepak, and that is kind of what key advice would you give to any organization either thinking about doing this or currently looking at it or kind of even just starting to implement?
I think the key thing is preparation. And what I mean is like just start simplifying today. Like the more hurdles you remove, the more kind of, things you remove before you kind of make the switch, the easier the cutover, right?
Yeah.
So start simplifying today. Also, other thing I'd say is like, having that plan is really important, but then make deliberate steps, so I remember like, sitting with my operations manager for IT, every single month we had some targets to, decommission something or reduce complexity or unclog something, right? So we did that for, like I said, 18 months to 2 years before we kind of went, okay, now we're going to do the project. While we were going through the procurement and piloting and all that, at the same time we were doing a lot of legwork to make sure we were ready for it. So preparation, simplify it, and then just take steps every week, every month, till you get to a point you'll know then, from there, that it, like, once you switch over, the hurdle will be minimum. And like I said, by the end of the project we were getting 1 to 2 minute cutovers, which we were very chuffed about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it really is all about planning, and key to that is understand what the business needs SASE for. Don't just go down the SASE path because you think it sounds sexy. Understand what it is and how it's going to actually help your business, and do some legitimate preparation for that. So I guess that's it, Deepak. I really appreciate all your insights here. Hopefully the participants has got a lot out of that. And with that, I'll throw back over to you, Graham. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one follow-up question. So a year or so or 6 months post deployment and probably a bit longer for your planning kickoff, would you have done anything differently along that journey? Would you, in hindsight? Just or your rollout, etc.
Yeah. No, I think again, like some things you just don't know, right? Especially when you have traditional network and we have 25 sites, and the variability in terms of what was there was just so much that, like, there would always be things we would have found out. But obviously, Rob and the team supported us really well. We were able to get on the phone, resolve those things, etc. So, again, like we already did 18 months worth of planning. Maybe we would have done another 6 months of planning, but the results may not have been that different, right? So it's about having enough confidence by the time you kind of get to, okay, we're going to push the button and go for it. Otherwise you're just never going to do it, because there's never a perfect time. So I don't know if I could have done anything differently, because I don't know if any outcome would have changed, even if we did more planning, if we had a couple more use cases, etc. It is newer technology. We're still finding out things that we go, oh, okay, this is how that works, and like, what does that mean, type of thing, to us and our business, type of thing. So for example, like we could now have so I've downloaded the Access client on my phone now yesterday, because someone's traveling overseas. They wanted to know if we would let them access some of the emails, etc. So our policy was previously, it was unless you're traveling to UK, Canada, and about 5 countries, New Zealand, etc., we wouldn't have. But now all of a sudden I went, oh yeah, let's try it. So so you're always doing stuff and improving on what you have. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but yeah, again, there's not much we would have achieved even if we would have done anything differently, if that makes sense.
It's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
progress through
it truly is. It truly is. And like, you just have to be good enough, because look at the issues we were having with our traditional stuff, right? That was a pain in the ass, like just to manage all this stuff and like not knowing, like, so the telcos and the, the SD-WAN providers and like, us and everyone just pointing fingers at each other going, where this is coming from. And then whenever we had to do, I don't know if you guys remember, Palo Alto had I suppose, a critical vulnerability a few months back now, and we were kind of at the tail end of the project, and we went, okay, just to mitigate the risk, let's just upgrade these firewalls. We were up at midnight trying to upgrade these firewalls with 3 to 4 hour downtimes and this and that. It's just gone, like not there anymore. Like, it's just, yeah, it's I can't say it enough. Just do enough work so all your big use cases are covered, and then just go for it, because otherwise you'll never do it.
There's a question from the floor which probably does relate a little bit to what you just went through with the challenges around managing the multiple sites. Did you consider, this is from the floor, did you consider extending a single management platform into the remote site infrastructure, such as switches and access points?
Yeah, so we using Aruba Central, obviously, currently. But for us, like I said, the driver wasn't so much, it wasn't us, so to speak, at IT. Ability to, get our sites up and running within 2 to 3 days now, as opposed to, used to take us 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes even 3 months. So all we have to now worry about is get a link in, whether it's NBN or whoever, get a link in, the box arrives in like a week or so, get it configured, take it to site. Some sites we've even done remotely now, like we've just sent it to the site. Like, it's that simplicity for the business was the driver, but in the end, we do have, Aruba Central that we now use to manage most of our stuff. But then there's also the Silver Peak side as well. So, there is 2 or 3 things we use, which is much better than 15 things we had before.
So, Rob, anything further you want to add before we look to wrap it up?
No, just to reiterate, I think this is an incredibly beneficial conversation, and Deepak's, disclosed a lot of what he's been through. So I really hope that the participants got something out of it. Yeah. And I really appreciate everyone showing up. Yeah,
and I just want to extend my thanks again to Deepak and to you, Rob, for the insightful conversation. It certainly is interesting to hear other people's journeys, because we always think we're different, but we're the same in many, many different ways. So thanks again. There has been a recording of this session taken, so we will share that link with anyone that was on the call today. Of course, if you do have any interest in a further conversation, we're more than happy at Accucom to reach out to you and obviously engage with yourselves and Aruba and have a conversation. But thanks very much. Appreciate all your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Thanks all.
Cheers.
Yep.